Hey guys, my name is Chance Woodcock. At the time currently being, I'm 19 years old. I was born 2006, December the 5th. And I just want to be real and tell my story to you guys, my story about my life. And I just want to start off by saying, I want to tell people my story because I want to make the world a better place, and I want to tell my story about my addiction, all my hard times, and just be real. And I want the world to know, let me give you my aspect before I start on my story. I feel like in my last life, um, you know, I was addicted to drugs and I overdosed and died, and that's how I died in my last life. I feel like my chance in this world is to help people change because I feel like, God has given me a second chance to live. And I feel like one of the expectations is that I went through the hard life when I was young, and this time I'm not gonna die from it. I'm gonna help people. And I just wanna say, I think that's my purpose. And I just wanna say, let's get straight into my story. So, when I was young, I was about, you know, when I was young, I grew up in a city called Windsor. I lived there for 9 years. I left Windsor when I was 12 years old. All my family was together and everything was going great. Then my mom got sick. She had a rare vein genetic disease and she died of a heart blockage at the age of 45. And I was only 12 years old. That hit me hard, and, February 5th, she died, and on February 14th, Valentine's Day, I went to her funeral. And when I saw her in her casket, man, that shit tore me apart, knowing that I'll never be able to see my mom again. But I know she's in heaven, but that shit really tore me apart, And like, after that, you know, we moved away and things just got hell broke loose. We moved away from Windsor. Um, you know, and we all just started separating apart slowly. I lived in and out of motels. And when we would get in a place, me and my brothers or my siblings would fight, and the landlord wouldn't like that, and they would just, give us an eviction notice. So at that point, we were living out of motels, and now, at this point, this is like 2 years. This is like 2 years. So this is 2 years after my mom died. I am 14. I am living in a motel with me and my brother and my dad. And I'm just gonna be real with you guys, um so me and my brother are living in a motel with my dad. It's just me and my brother at this time, and this time, you know, I remember one night my brother comes crying to me at 1 a.m. and I'm sleeping, and I woke up out of mid-sleep. And I just want to give you guys an update. At this point, I started smoking cigarettes when I was like 13, a year after my mom died. And then I started getting into weed afterwards. I started getting into like weed. And at this point, I'm sleeping and I hear my brother Connor crying, yelling, Chance, Chance, banging on the door. So I'm like all panicked, and I come to the door and he opens it and he's like, Chance, Dad just overdosed. I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean, bro? And at this point, I'm panicking because at this point, I just lost my mom 2 years ago, and I don't want to lose another parent. So I'm like, where? So we go into this other motel room, and I walk in there and I run in there, and then I see my dad sitting in the chair, and he's like this, and he's foaming from the mouth, and fucking sweat's pouring off his face. And I see this random drug lady, and she's like, oh, don't call the cops, don't call the cops, don't call the cops. And me and my brother like, no, we're gonna call the cops. So he picks up the phone, tell him call. And at this point, they're like, get him water to put on and to try to cool him down. And so that happened. And my brother's like, Connor, Chance, go run and get help. So I go run. I start running and I'm yelling, help, help. And at this point, it's 3 a.m. It's pitch black. And I start yelling, help, help, help. Right? And then luckily this guy heard me. He's like, what's going on? What's going on? I said, my dad just overdosed. He's like, where? So he starts running. And at this point, my brother's on the phone with 911, Connor. And they're talking. They're all talking, and they're like, is he breathing? At this point, he's unconscious, and he was clinically dead for 10 minutes. Anyhow, the guy who I got started giving him CPR for for a while, and then the ambulance came. And I remember the ambulance came, and I was there, and I was crying. The paramedics came in the room, fire service, and I was crying. I'm like, why? I don't want to lose another parent. And I still remember that. And that the fear I was having, it really stressed me out. And I remember the paramedics are like, get him out, get his kids out of the room. So they got me out of the room. I head back, and then, the police talked to me and my brother, and they're like, what happened, and blah, blah, blah. So my brother said, some got laced with weed. And, I said the same thing. We stood up for my dad. I love my dad with all my heart and soul. So, that happened. The CS came, everything was crazy. He turned out to be alright, and I was very happy. I think if it wasn't for me and my brother, he would be dead, because that lady would have just left him. Anyhow, back to what I was saying. So that happened. And then shortly after, I was living at my sister's, and my brother Eric, and I just had a lot of things on my mind with my mom's death, and things were stressing me out, things were happening. So at that point, I put a knife to my throat, and I was crying, I can't do this no more, bro. I can't do this no more. So my brother is all shook, and he comes and he restrains me, takes the knife out of my hand, holds me down for 5 minutes. He's saying, I love you, bro, I love you, and I'm crying. And at that point, I was like, whatever. So I started running to Tim Hortons, and I call 911, and they put me in the hospital on a Form 1, because I told them everything. I was in the hospital on a Form 1, and they kept me in the hospital for over a month. They gave me treatment and everything. Everything seemed to be okay. From there, I went back to my sister's, and from there, once I went back to my sister's, the hospital were actually releasing me to my nana. So from there, I went back to my sister's, and my sister drove me to my nana's, where I stayed at my nana's for a couple months. And then things were starting to break apart. I wasn't listening. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't listening. I was giving my nana attitude, and things were happening. So I had nowhere else to go. So my nana talked to this DS worker, and we had no choice but to put me in a foster home. So I went to the foster home out in Aaron. And from there, I met my buddy, my friend John. And I've been close friends with John for now 6 years, and he's a sober guy. He doesn't do cigarettes, doesn't touch nothing, doesn't even drink. He's a good friend. He always calls me. We play video games every once in a while. I know it's whatever. I'm not gonna bring that on topic, but that's where I met my friend. From there, like, things were going crazy, and then I stayed for the month, and I stayed in the foster home for a couple months. This other guy moved in. His name was Joseph, and from there I met the guy, and this guy was nothing but trouble. He broke into this place, and he's like, "Yo, you're the guy for this job," and I should have never did it with him, but we did it. Turned out it was a church, and I didn't know. So we went in, we took a bunch of money, some iPads and some laptops. And here's the stupid thing, we didn't even wear no face mask, or we didn't spray paint the cameras, nothing. And we did that, and we got away with it for a couple days. Then the cops came banging at the door, and they're like, "Yo," they said to the foster parent, "Do you know these people?" And they're like, "Yeah, I know exactly who those are. They live here, So at this point, the cops come and talk to me, and I'm all pissed. I'm like, whatever. I give them back the items. They wanted me and him to do a program, because I guess the people were religious and they're willing to forgive. And at that point, I start yelling and shit. Like, when the cops left, I started yelling. And I remember getting into the foster parent's face, and this foster parent is old, and I was like, "I want to go home, bro. I want to go home." And I remember yelling right in his face. And I remember feeling bad for him, because he's an old guy, and I thought it was going to give him a heart attack. And I could see his face was getting redder and redder. And yeah, that happened. And then the cops came back, and I started freaking out. So blah blah happened. They're like, "You know what? He said he'll take you home, but you gotta apologize." So I went and apologized. Everything went good. They brought me back to my dad's, and from there things were going crazy. Like, things were starting to go good. I was in Stratford. From there, I lived there for like 5 months. I started going to school again. And then I remember, like 4 months being there, I was off my meds, and I was also smoking a lot of weed there too, and smoking cigarettes. So blah blah happened. I started getting like mad and angry, and this one night, and the cops came, and I was like, "I want to leave," and they're like, "No." So they took me to the hospital, and blah 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 happened, and I was in the hospital. And while I was in the hospital, the cops just surround the room, and the doctor came in, and he's like, "We can do this easy or the hard way," and he had a needle, and I was like, "Fuck, man, I'm gonna be done for if I do it the hard way." So they stick a needle in me. I pass out. I wake up the next day, and my dad comes. They give me a sandwich. The sandwich drugs up, and I started sleeping again. So the next day, I went back home to my dad's. Things went good, and things really, took a turn from there. From there, with all the noise and the things that were happening, we ended up getting evicted from the landlord. So from there, we moved from Stratford to Hairston, and then we moved in from my dad's house, and then things were going great until one day, things happened, and the CS came, and things were, I don't want to talk about all of it, but I can tell you, things were going, things were happening, and me and my brother, the cops came, and me and my brother just started flipping out. So we ended up, I remember I got mad, and I took off my shirt because I was punching the wall, and I came out, I took off my shirt, and a lady was getting ready to tase me, the cop lady. And my brother My brother picked up the bong and he says, Connor, and he says, you tase him, I'm gonna whip this over your head. So she put it back in her pocket, and it was whatever. And then as soon as he left, they're like, we're gonna come back with more officers or blah blah blah. I remember they took my dad and my sister to Mount Forest, meet up with my sister. And anyhow, so me and my brother made a plan. We barricaded the house in. And then we completely destroyed my dad's house. When the cops came, you know, we done a lot of things. I'm actually gonna show you a video, you know. I just wanna say, you know, it works both ways, you know. I put my family through hell, I put my dad through hell, but also I've been through hell and back with all the hard times I've been through, you know. I just want to say, yo, just keep out of jail, stay out of trouble, don't do drugs, stay sober. Like, this is my story, boys, and I just want to show you, you know, I've been through a lot and I've done a lot of bad shit, but no matter what I do, I keep moving forward, you know. I just want the world to know my story. This is my pain. This is my getaway, and this is like therapy, showing you my story, you know. I just want to let it all out today, and I want the world to know, you know. Like, I've been through a lot. I want to make the world a better place by sharing my story and my experiences with you guys. Anyhow, guys, you know, I've been through a lot, and that's not even the beginning of my story. So that happened. From there, the CS came. I was in a group home, broke that window, and then, you know, I ended up, sorry, let me rephrase myself. After that all went down, I spent like a week in juvie, and then that shit went down, and then I got out, and then, you know, I was in a foster home, in group homes for that straight year, and then I was in this foster home, this Jamaican foster home, and you know, things didn't work out there, and I went back to my sister's. You know, I met this girl. My sister, I'm not gonna lie, she was trans, and I just want to be real, she was trans, and she still had a vagina though, and so that's why I dated her, because she was like a woman to me, and I really loved this girl. You know, we dated for 5 months and 2 weeks, and then I ended up taking meds, because we broke up, and I ended up having a mental breakdown. I took meds, ended up in the hospital again, and at that point I'm in there for a month and a half. Then I get out, then I go back to my dad's, and things happen. It's a very long story, like, to be honest with you, but anyhow, like, you know, I went back to my dad's, and, you know, this was like 7 or 8 months later. You know, a lot of things happened. Like, I moved around a lot. I went to my brother's house. I damaged his house, and then I went to jail again, and juvie. I spent 2 months in juvie. Cause I had probation, I had a lot of restrictions, so they kept me in juvie for like 2 months. I spent time at the Roy McMurtry Center in Brampton, and then I came out, and then, you know, from there things took a turn. What I did was, you know, I remember getting out. I went back to my dad's, released me to my dad's again. Then from there, I was there for like a couple days, 4 days maybe. And then I got really high and drunk, and then I wanted to text my ex again. So I texted her like, we should get back, and she wasn't replying. So I was just too high, and I got mad, and I said, no, I'm gonna fucking kill you and your boyfriend, which I should never did. But it's whatever, you know, that happened. And so I'm walking in Circle K with my dad, cops surround us, and they arrest me. From there, I went to juvie for about 14 days. And then from there, they released me to a shelter. Now, this was the first time I was in a shelter. I met this guy in the Youth Haven shelter in Barrie. And then, we started doing drugs. And that's when I started getting addicted to meth and crack. And I started drinking, smoking weed a lot more than usual. And I got a lot addicted to drugs. And, I started taking a lot of pills. At this time I was released by my bail supervisor, and I got kicked out of that shelter. I was living on the streets for like a month, and then I went to the Busby for it's an adult, and then I got kicked out of that one because I started fighting with drugs and everything and different things. So at this point I'm sleeping on the ground trying to look for a place to sit. I was sleeping in BMO parking lots and the security would come and kick me out. And this was, somewhat in the middle of winter and spring, so I was sleeping on the ground. It was hard, and then from there I went to my buddy's house. He tried putting a roof over my head. I spent like 4 days or a week there, and I left shortly after, and I went back to my dad's, and then things happened again. And I remember, things happened again. I ended up, my sister was there. I damaged my sister's. Well, sorry, let me tell you how it happened. My dad kicked me out because I was fighting and arguing with him. Because, from there I went to my dad's and then spent 2 weeks there. And afterwards I was like, I want to go back to Barrie. Because I wanted to do some more drugs. So from there, my dad was like, alright, I'll call Ashley, she'll bring you. So from there, I asked my dad if he had any medication. And so he gives me my brother's meds and I took them with me. This is really hard to talk about, but I want to be real and share my story. I took them with me, so we went to Kitchener-Waterloo. And at this point, my sister said she wanted to go meet her boyfriend, because at this point we're already on the Barrie. We're heading towards Barrie, and she said she wanted to stop by Kitchener to pick up her boyfriend. I said no. I started losing my shit, so I was like, I want to get out of the car. So I got out of the car, and then I remember my dad was yelling, fuck you, Chance, have a nice life, you fucking loser. Bye, I want nothing more to do with you, this and that, And then from there, I was like, alright, fuck you, and I was so emotionally upset. I took all the pills that I had. I started walking, went behind the bushes, just popped all of them. I remember I walked for like 3 or 2 hours. Then I sat down at this, what do you call it? Plaza. I sat down at this plaza and I started feeling very, very lightheaded. So I needed to sit down or else I was gonna collapse. And then I threw up red liquid from the meds that were in me. And then I walked, and from there I started walking around for like 2 weeks. And then I remember I was on drugs and I was tweaking. And I remember picking up a bowl pipe at one point, just a random bowl pipe, and I found a torch and I just started smoking it. And those whole 2 weeks I was just looking for drugs, doing drugs. And then at one point I thought there was a body in the creek river, so I jumped in the river. Next thing you know, I hear woo, police surround me and fire ambulance, and they're like, what are you doing down there, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I can climb it. So I started climbing up. They put a neck brace on me because I didn't know whether my neck was okay or whatever. And I said, no, it's fine. And they bring me from there. They bring me to the hospital. I stay there for the night, and then I remember I wake up to the doctor putting something on my chest, on my kidney, and he says, yeah, he's like, we're releasing you, but he's like, I just want to give you an update. He said, you have kidney problems. So he says, you got to stop taking drugs. So, from there, I went back on the street. I spent a couple nights. This was around 4 a.m. in the morning. I said, fuck it, I don't want to be on the street no more. So I took a brick, I threw it for the Scotiabank window in Kitchener, and that happened. And I waited for the police. I busted up the window. I came to the police. I stopped the police, and I said, I told them everything what happened. So they put me in cuffs. I went in front of the judge, and the judge says, you're not gonna do that again, right? If we release you. He said, you gotta have a place to go. I said, I can go to my dad. So from there, I went from my dad. So that was one of the worst mistakes. I had court, and the judge asked me while I was at my dad's, because I was on video Zoom. He asked me, is your dad's a safe place to go to? And I said, yeah. So from there they released me there. Not even 2 weeks later, I started fighting with my dad, and he kicked me out. So I came back the next morning, and I don't know if I was on drugs or hallucinating, but it was 5 a.m. in the morning, and I banged on the door. I said, yo, Dad, I just want to talk. And I remember that I heard his voice. I swear to God, I heard his voice, bro. And I remember him saying, I heard 911, what's your emergency? That was before I broke the window. I remember hearing that. So I said, okay, if you don't, fuck it, I'm just gonna break the window, because at this point he already put a trespassing order for me, and I wanted to help fix it, but it was too late. So I damaged the windows, and I went inside after I broke the windows. And I remember seeing my dad's face. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack. I felt bad for him. When I first threw the first brick, and I damaged my sister's car. Anyhow, so that happened. I went in the house, grabbed the pill bottle, and I started taking them. I started taking a bunch of Tylenol, Advil, and I was just taking them. As the police show up, they're like, drop the bottle, so I'm still taking them. Then I dropped them. Then he put me in cuffs. And from there, I went to juvie. I spent a total of 2.5 months in juvie at the Roy McMurtry in Brampton. They had me on a whole bunch of different meds, and I was going crazy, And I remember I called my dad, and I was like, yo, I want to go to rehab. I want to change. And I remember I went and talked to the judge twice and said, can I just go to rehab? We're not releasing you from jail. We're not putting you in rehab for you can get away with what you did. So I was like, whatever, So I did it, and I told my dad, and he didn't believe me at all. So, when I ran out, they released me. I spent 2.5 months. They released me to a shelter in Guelph. It's called the Wyndham House. And from there, I spent five or 4 nights on the street. And I remember I'd done a lot of things. I was tweaking. I wasn't in my right headspace. I was doing drugs. And those 4 days, I think I really found God. And from there, those 4 nights, the night before, I'm just gonna bring it off. The night before I went to rehab, those 4 nights after I got released from juvie, I did fentanyl. I took fentanyl. I picked up this guy's pipe off the ground who just overdosed, and I remember putting the Narcan in his nose and pressing the button, and it just went like this. So I was like, whatever, yo, he's not doing nothing, so I'm just gonna take his pipe in the store. So I go out, I smoke my brains out too, I can't no more. I remember crushing the pipe with my hands, and my hand bleeding and glass in my hand. I was like, whatever. So I remember there was fire and ambulance. There was fire and ambulance. I remember I seen flashing lights. So I walk across the street, and at this point, I'm lightheaded as shit. So I clinically drop onto someone's staircase, and then I sit there for 2 minutes, and I get up, I walk across the street, and I sit down in the shelter. Are you okay? Yeah, sorry, They cleaned my hand. I said I just needed coffee. So that happened, and the ambulance came in. They're like, "What's wrong with this guy?" And I'm like, I'm fine. I just need a coffee." They're like, "Whatever," pretty much. So they leave, and I remember I started doing cleaning, and then the next day, my probation officer came, and she brought me McDonald's and shit. And I was just listening to music. I was sick, bro. Honestly, I was, and I think she realized that, and she was like, she had a couple officers with her, you know. They were like, "Chance, I think you need some help." She's like, "Talk to these officers," and they're like, "What's up, buddy? How's it going?" They talked for me for like 20 minutes. And, they were talking with me, the officers, and I said, like, they say, "We think you need some help." I said, "No, I need rehab, man. I need rehab, I need to make myself better. I want to make the world a better place." And I think I said that to my probation officer like 20 times that night. And like, that happened, and like it did, but like I was talking to officers, and I was like, one of the things I remember saying, it's like, "I can't do this without my family, man. I can't do it." I was talking about my brother Cole, my dad. I even showed the officers the song "When the Children Cry." And I was saying the song my dad showed me. It's a very beautiful song, talking about my dad, talking about my brother, talking about Eric. Those 4 nights, I remember watching my brother Eric's videos and just laughing. I said to myself, I want to be like that. I want to be like my brother Eric, because he's been sober his whole life, and he's doing videos about, here's the thing, I want to do it my own way. I want to make my own videos. Even if I don't get paid, that's all right, So anyhow, back to what I was saying, that happened. I spent a total of 6 or 3 months at Ontario Shores. From there, they released me and to a grouping home. I signed myself into the CS Care when I turned 18. A little bit before 17 when I was at Ontario Shores, and I wanted to better my life, so I did it. I did that, and from there, I went to a grouping home, and I've been living at this grouping home for the past year and a half. And everything's just been going well for me. I've been doing so much better. Family Options took me in, and my caseworker and everyone, and my BT, they're all a big help for me. And like, I just want to thank them too. I know I lived a hard life and I did it on my own, but I appreciate all the support, because I can get through something on my own, but you also need help along the way. So I appreciate everything they've done for me, all the staff and everything, But like, that's my story, guys, and I've been sober for a year and a half. But I want to talk about something, a month ago, I went to my dad's, and I haven't smoked weed in over a year. And I went to my dad's, and my sister and her boyfriend were fighting. So I was stressing out. I should have called and asked to go home, but it's whatever. I asked my dad for some weed. He's like, and the first thing he said to me, he's like, "No, I don't want to mess everything up you've done." He's like, "You know what?" And I really begged him, and I said, "I won't say anything, and that's why I said to him, I won't say nothing, please." And I begged him, I begged the shit out of him, so he gave it to me. So it's my fault, mainly my fault, But like, and then I smoked weed. As soon as I took the toke out of the bong, my body just felt different, bro. Like, I was super high out of my mind. So I was feeling excited. So first thing I do is go to the living room, and I start listening to music, this and that, and the music hit different, bro. The music hit different. Like, I remember the first thing I did was listen to Blink 182, Adam song. And then I played "I'm Still Breathing," and then it came to my mind like, yo, I can't do Family Options like that, I come a long way. I already broke my promise. So, from there I went to my dad's room. I went to my dad's room, and I talked to him. I was like, "Yo, man," like, I had a cigarette, and I was like, "Yo, man," like, this and that. And then I started panicking, and then I was like, "Fuck." And I asked him to call, so he asked me to make up a lie. I was like, whatever, man, you know. And so my people came and got me. You know, I told them the truth, everything, and that all happened. And so yeah, I relapsed. I relapsed not too long ago. But you know, it's how we move forward. And I just want you guys to know, everyone, you know, is gonna make mistakes. We all make mistakes. This addiction thing is hard. And you know, we're all gonna relapse. It's how we move forward. You know, I just wanna say, don't do drugs, stay sober, stay safe. And if you're struggling with drugs, go to rehab or talk to someone. You can get through it. I wanna work on a book. It's called A Boy Named Chance Who Got a Second Chance. Alright boys, my name is Chance Woodcock. I'm signing out. Peace.